Welcome back to the Homefront podcast. I am your host, Blair Hicks. So excited for today's episode because not only do we have Derek, and you haven't been on one of our Homefront podcasts
Blair
yet.
and Derek back together again.
Team Blairick. Although some people who are tuning in may not even know Team Blairick. So let me formally introduce you. Yep. Pastor Derek, one of our co-lead pastors here at Forward Church. Also, you have many titles, but one of the most important one is father to
Dad.
3 teenage kids. What are the age of your kids?
I would actually say that husband is a more important
fine. If
title,
you're going to get all...
but father's right up there.
I mean, your kids would argue it's an important title.
It is absolutely, but you said most important title.
One of the more...
I'm trying to score points in my marriage.
Ooh,
Blair,
yeah. You want another Christmas present. That's what you want from Amanda. Teenage, what are the age of your kids?
3 kids, 19, 17, and 15.
Okay. And my kiddos are the opposite of the end of the timeline here, which is 6 and 8.
Way to go, Blair.
Almost
you got
6.
your kids' ages right.
In my defense, she just turned 8. But the most exciting part of this is that we have a special guest, Chris McKenna from Protect Young Eyes. Welcome, Chris. We are really excited that you are here and that we finally get to start our conversation on social media.
And technology.
Yeah, just that. Hey, Blair. Hi, Derek. Yeah.
We already gave a background. I want to dive right in because Derek and I are both really excited about this podcast. Why don't you, we gave a background with us. Why don't you give us a background of you and Protect Young Eyes? What first inspired you to start it? How did it come to fruition?
Yeah, this is not a path I really ever expected to be on. I'm a CPA. I'm supposed to be a partner at an accounting firm somewhere, which is the exact opposite of what I'm doing. And so I don't know what path either of you, were, quote, supposed to be on. I always put that in quotes. But I was also, as a young child, exposed to pornography, a story that I'm sure is pretty common. A lot of Gen X dads or fathers and men like me have a very similar experience, I think, and that played out differently in a lot of our lives. And for me, when the internet rolls around now, you remove all the barriers. And so that led to really unhealthy use of pornography in my life as a young adult, as a young husband, all these things. And so I was able to come through that through Christ and accountability. And that's sort of one part. So let's put a pin in that. After about 12 years in business, I had a great job, business consulting, senior manager, but the Lord called me into full-time ministry. And so I went from risk advising large publicly traded companies to then running student ministry and church finance at a large church here in West Michigan, which was a massive change, but really felt that strong call. And the time of when that happened after 12 years was from 2009 to 2016. And that was when we as humanity decided it was a good idea to put supercomputers into the pockets of 7th graders and just expect them to never make a mistake.
Yeah.
And so I want to layer that over, like that observation. I'm watching parents hand down their old iPhone 5s to their kids and not really understanding the risk that they were introducing into the lives of their kids, right? At youth group, I would have boxes of Bibles and coats and hoodies, but no one ever left me this new prized possession, which was this new device. And think back to what I just described. So my professional background was risk management and exposed to hardcore pornography, which almost ruined my life. And then I watched us put that monster in kids' pockets. So all of that kind of came together and created this problem that to me needed a solution. That's the consultant in me, right? Problem, solution. And so that led to education, a closed Facebook group, and launching the website in 2015. And there's a lot that's happened in the last 10 years specific to Protect Young Eyes to get to where we are today. But how I even got to the, hey, I need to launch this website kind of thing are the things that I just described to you kind of all coming together and looking back and going, yeah, this is the unsettling that I was feeling back in 2013, 14, which led to trying to solve this problem, wasn't based on science. We didn't have the research. And I look back and now we do, right? We have the books and the research that's coming out. And I'm feeling that, that was the Lord saying this is a problem that needs to be addressed. So that's how we got to where we are in this conversation.
Yeah, and we were talking before we started recording just about exactly that, but about the need, the need and that you've been fulfilling with Protect Young Eyes at schools and at churches, just educating parents and even the kids themselves what they need to know because they didn't know before they were handed it or whatever, right? Like we just need to educate, which is like the sole purpose of this episode of the podcast, which I think is going to be so helpful for parents and even just teachers and anybody, walking into this next era of technology. So then talking about, so actually my favorite part of your story was just that wonderful part where it's clear that the Lord used something so difficult in your life and made something so wonderful out of it. That was definitely stood out to me in your story. I love that. So you kind of already said why social media is such a big deal for parents to be aware of. You talked about, we're just handing them our phones or it's just broadening, but there was a lack of knowledge. We're getting more knowledge now, more studies. But
Right.
Is there like an area of social media that's what's the most misunderstood part of the conversation for social media safety?
Well, I want to step back and sort of look at a 50,000-foot view of what we have. And I'll say something that will sound like it doesn't make sense because, well, this is new technology. But at the end of the day, there's really nothing new under the sun when it comes to what Silicon Valley is trying to do with social media, and maybe we'll even have a chance to talk about AI, because if all we're thinking about right now is social media, we're already 10 years behind, and AI is taking the same exact playbook and is ramping it up at exponential speed to point what social media was pointing at our brain in a way that we have never experienced as human beings. Right. But just to step back for a minute, what has been true about us as created beings is we desire connection with each other and we desire connection with our Heavenly Father. Like, we're all about relationship. The pandemic taught us a lot, and it taught us that the two-dimensional version of this isn't the same as me physically being with you. And although I love this conversation and technology can help us have this podcast together, there'd be something slightly different if I were sitting in the room with you.
Well, we were even having a struggle, Chris, even just to figure out how to describe this, right? Yeah. Because it's not the same, but it is something. Yeah. And even putting words around it, you're trying to figure out how do you talk about this?
Right. We desire these embodied relationships with each other. I mean, God could have snapped his fingers from heaven and saved us with a wave, but there was something significant about taking on human form, walking and living and breathing with us that was a critical part of salvation in the story. So at the end of the day, social media is coming after our attention, and it promised us this better connection with each other, and we found out that it lied. It lied. It didn't satisfy that deep longing that we have. And that's true whether you're 4, 14, or 40. And so when it comes to social media, it's easy to judge the way that young people use it. It's easy to sort of tip your nose up and say, oh, I can't believe that they are addicted to that, or I can't believe they looked at that, or I can't believe they sent that. Or at the end of the day, the 14-year-old version of every adult, caregiver, grandparent listening to this would have wanted the exact same thing. This isn't bad kids making bad choices on social media. This is a perfectly logical outcome for a perfectly designed technology that is pointed right at the one thing that young people want, and that is stronger connection with each other. And so it's not that they want social media. They honestly want to be around where others like them are. Right. And when so many adults and parents have said yes to social media, of course that's what they want. Right. We could have said yes to something else, like hanging out at the mall like we did for a season. And guess what? That's where we wanted to go because that's where our friends are. And so I want us to sort of stir our empathy here a little bit more for what it's like to be a young person today, to desperately want connection with others, to be going through a phase where you just are asking big questions about life, and you're seeing all your friends in this digital space, and you just want to be there. And it's a complicated time to parent. It's a complicated time to pastor. It is a ridiculously difficult time to grow up. And they've got it harder than we do. And so I want us to kind of level set right there for the rest of this conversation so that our default response whenever a child sends something they shouldn't, looks at something they shouldn't, says something, types something they shouldn't, I want our default response to be that that's probably not their fault.
Oh, I think that's so important. I feel like that is, you kind of did answer the question about what's the most misunderstood, and maybe I'm alone in this, but like, what's the most misunderstood part of the conversation? That's it. Like that they're not, it's the innocence of it. They're right. But so then another part of that would be, I've heard you use with, Protect Young Eyes, like on your Instagram. That's where I've seen most of your content. Delay is the way, and this applies to, I think this applies to AI. You have to talk about delay is the way. Is there an ideal age then that you believe most kids are ready for social media or smartphones? Is there signs of readiness that parents should be looking for? Maybe this isn't the next question. Yeah. Maybe we need to be asking instead, like, how do parents educate themselves on all of this stuff? Because there's a lot.
There is a lot. And, my CPA kind of brain definitely likes the idea of a checklist, right, that we can go through. And if you spend time in our digital spaces, as you've done, Blair, and anybody listening or watching this, go to our website, go to our, ironically, social media platforms that we're trying to use for good. But I think you'll see what I try to take what can sometimes feel sort of subjective and philosophical and sort of big and scary, and try to boil it down into a few things to check off, a few frameworks, a few pictures, because I think that just helps sort of turn it into something that is doable for a lot of very overwhelmed parents. And just to back up for a minute, my opening comments were not to shame parents who maybe are now going, oh, I've not treated my child with enough empathy, or to make somebody feel badly about giving their child social media too soon. The rest of this conversation is to just simply say, step back and ask some big questions about the digital decisions that we're making. Not every 14-year-old who has a smartphone and Snapchat turns into a depressed, suicidal version of themselves. But you just have to remember that my view, because of my professional background, I was a risk assessor. I went into large businesses and would assess business risk, and I would put things in place that would mitigate risk. When I look at a digital world built on a business model that is designed to extract as much human attention as possible in social media and to create as much human affection as possible with AI, I see a business model that was not designed for the unique, unbelievable, miraculous attributes of children. And therefore, to me, it increases the risk. And so I want us to be aware of the risk so that we can take what we each know about our children. You know your children much better than I ever could. Derek, same with you. As long as we're aware of the risks and we're aware of our amazing children and their behaviors, we can then make informed decisions about what they can and can't handle without listening to the marketing, without listening to the pressures, without listening to culture. We need to make those decisions based on this information. And so I want to put that out there. We want to be a soft place for your parents and others to land where they can find this information that will help them make some of those decisions, because delay is the way is not meant to be an indictment on those who have already said yes. It's meant to be an invitation into a different message than what you'll ever hear from big tech, which is, if they don't have it, they'll be behind. If they don't have this, they will somehow not get into the right college. They'll be, bad at this or that. They won't get a good job someday. And I'm telling you, looking at evidence, kind of with my CPA hat on for just a minute, and that was my whole job, was to use evidence into making business decisions. Instead of listening to the 95% of parents who have said yes, why don't we pay attention to the 5%, which are almost every social media executive and the digital decisions that they're making about their children as they send them to Montessori schools, as they don't allow their children to use the applications and the features that they're rolling out to all of our children. That's who I want us to be listening to, and just asking not just those kinds of yes or no questions, but let's ask even questions about the eternal destination of our children. Because at the end of the day, when it comes to making technology decisions, it's really not that important that our children are happy. We're not here to make our children happy. We're here to point them toward holiness. And I want our digital decisions to be informed by what is going to set our children up for an eternal destination, but along the way, having the best potential to intersect with the still quiet voice of the Lord in a really chaotic, noisy digital world.
Yeah.
And that's a difficult decision at times because you're watching friends and everybody else saying yes, but that's ultimately what we're held to account as parents and caregivers. And I want us to keep our eye on that prize.
Chris, I appreciate you saying, hey, I don't want parents to feel ashamed. As a parent of now older kids, I was kind of on the cutting edge of all of this stuff getting introduced, right? And I look back now and I'm looking and saying, man, if I knew then what I know now, I would make some different decisions. It's easy for me to get either trapped in a, man, I should have done that differently and wish I could go back, or get caught in a kind of sunk cost fallacy of doubling down on what I did because I did it, so it was okay. And not wanting to admit that, hey, maybe we could have done some things differently. But as a lot of us as parents, we're also we're learning alongside everybody else, because this is, in the grand scheme of things, still so fresh and so new. I couldn't look to my parents and say, hey, what did my parents do, and learn from their successes and mistakes in the world of what I do with my kids in a digital world.
That's right. Yeah, for sure. And that's why, you have to deal with this every weekend as a pastor, where you know that every crowd that you're in front of has so many different types. There are, teens and adults and grandparents. You have some who are lonely, some aren't, some who are married, some who aren't. So in all the kind of education that I went through in terms of crafting sermons, you always had to be mindful of the different audiences. And I'm mindful that in this conversation, there are going to be different parents in different parts of this. There are going to be parents who, like you, Blair, are in front of this and have the luxury of saying no and delay because you haven't said yes yet. And that's an easier spot to be in than others. So delay is the way it lands naturally with you. Yes, I'm on board. I'm going to delay because my kids don't have any of that stuff yet. There are others who have already said yes, and I think there's some really helpful things I'd love to say to them. And then there's others. Yeah, and even in the said yes, there are two different types of yeses. There's the yes, and I'm not going to take it away. It's just too hard. I don't have the grit, and I'm not going to take it away because they're being left out of everything. Okay, that's reasonable, and I want to speak to that. But there are others who I think are listening to this who are going, you know what? We really need to make a change. We said yes, and I need to do something, and I just don't know how. And I think there's a way for those parents to find some hope and support too. So all of you listening, and wherever you sort of find yourself there, just know, number one, that you're not alone. If you were to hang out in our community, we have a private community in our social media spaces, I think you'd see pretty quickly that you're in good company, no matter which of those categories you're in, and that there's hope and opportunity and things you can do in each of those three lanes also.
So why don't we talk about those three? Do you want to start maybe with those, Blair, who kind of find themselves in your boat, who are like, what should I be thinking? What should the checklist be? When do I? Because one of the things I love, we mentioned this before coming on, is that you can come. There are certain people in the realm that you're in who are just anti-tech. I mean, at the end of the day, they're actually just they've defaulted to anti-tech partially because they're fearful of any technology.
Sure, like ignorant.
And
right.
And that's not where you're sitting. You're not, as you guys said, you're about protecting, but you're also pro-tech. You're not anti-tech. But how do we use tech and not allow tech to use us? How do we protect ourselves from the downsides while still recognize there's some good things that can happen here when you're somebody like Blair who's just starting out with young kids?
For sure. And so to be just straight up front at the beginning here, every yes to technology does bring risk into your home. Therefore, every yes to technology demands a ridiculous amount of intentionality to mitigate risk to the spot where it's okay. And so that's, some parents, there's different generations and different perspectives. if you're going to be a parent today and you are choosing to bring young humans into the world, part of the gig is to prepare them for using technology. That's just part of the gig.
Yeah.
You don't get to delegate this. You don't get to sign this off to somebody else.
Yeah.
Our role as Deuteronomy 6:5-9, all the time, when you wake up, when you go to bed, in the door frame, like that kind of intentionality. Because when I read that, I see God saying before we even knew the word, you want your kids to know what's good and holy and honorable, then you got to be an algorithm in their lives as a parent, over and over and over again.
Right.
And that's just the gig as a parent right now, because the real algorithms will do it if you don't.
Right.
And they have a different desired outcome for the hearts and minds of our kids. So the delay parent, which is typically a parent of younger children, right? Like you, Blair, there are two categories of protection that we can put around our kids, two big categories. Now, at a more tactical level, I have some layers of protection with hardware and software, but I want to put things in like two big buckets right now. There are relational ways to protect our children and technical ways to protect our children. And there's an inverse relationship related to age with that balance. The younger the children, the more I rely on technical protections. I'm preparing my children with some relationship and some come and talk to me and some tools and practice. But I don't want to talk to my 6-year-old after they've seen pornography. I want to do whatever I can to block it and protect them from it at all costs.
To delay that conversation.
Right. And so we depend a lot more on technical protections, the younger the child. But that balance starts to change a little bit as they get older. So to the parent of younger children, this is why it's so critical to delay certain addictive technologies while the brain is just so under development, especially those first 1,000 days of life, which are so critical for attachment to humans like caregivers and parents, but then afterwards to keep them out of addictive, but then all the filters and all the controls and keep the devices out of darker and private places like bedrooms and bathrooms and basements and those kinds of, like, we have to be ridiculously intentional about those things when we have young children. And what I would say is that includes our devices as adults. And so one of the things that I say to parents of young children is, and this is true in whatever age your children are, what I didn't describe at the beginning is, so I have 4 children right now, maybe more, who knows in the future, but I have 4 for now. They are ages 21, 15, 15, and 14. Right. So my daughter's the oldest. She's in college. And then I have twin 15-year-old boys and a 14-year-old who are in grades 8, 9, and 10 here in the States. And then my daughter's in her 3rd year at university. And my twins, who are fraternal, I have one who was born with Down syndrome. The other one was not.
Right.
Wow.
And I say that for context because of what I'm about to say next. We have to treat every single digital device in a way that it could do no harm to the most vulnerable human in our home.
Right.
So for me, that's Grant. He's not the youngest, but he has the decision-making and curiosity of a 7-year-old. And so I have to make sure that every device, including my smartphone, Blair, including your smartphone, your Android, right? We had that conversation earlier about I'm Apple, you're Android, but that's okay. But I mean,
nobody thinks less of you, Blair. Nobody.
Except for you, Derek.
No, I was highlighting that as a sign of intelligence.
Ooh, I like it.
But we have to make sure for younger kids that we're doing those kinds of technical protective things, because I have so many messages from moms who in a moment just needed to hand their phone to a kid who then got into something horrible on mom's phone, or got into something horrible on grandma's iPad when they were at grandma's house. So those are the kinds of intentional technical things that we still have to do, even if we said no to social media or no to smartphones and all that kind of stuff through the pre-elementary and elementary years.
Yeah, I think for me with this, where I am kind of where you guys said, I'm in that place of like that delay, the delay is the way, and putting in the technological help, right? We've done a few things where, but I think the thing that overwhelms me the most is just how quickly it's changing. Like, even when I made these questions, I was making them about social media, and then you guys were talking about AI, and I was like, man, I feel like I just heard about that. Like, staying up to date with all this stuff and staying educated on it, I find that's where a lot of my overwhelm comes from. And maybe that's also, I'm choosing the delay as the way also to give me more time to like educate myself. But like, is there like a way, I guess this is the point of one of the points of Protect Young Eyes, isn't it? Is to educate and teach parents what's going on, where, how, and like you said, having the tactical help to put those in place as we change from that approach of like the tactical or the technical to the relational. Yeah. But that's where my overwhelm would probably come from.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. As parents, we want to know and understand, but I also think that we introduce a lot of unnecessary need to know and understand by bringing a lot of unnecessary technology into our homes sometimes.
Yeah,
and
true,
so
yeah.
I think this is where we can say yes to slightly fewer things, say no to YouTube, that would be okay, right?
Yeah.
Say no to Roblox, that would be okay.
Yeah.
Because a yes to either one of those does bring an enormous amount of complexity, an enormous amount of risk, and feeling overwhelmed because these are spaces that weren't designed for our kids in the first place.
Chris, I think
so.
It may be like, because I'm sure that there are a bunch of parents that let's talk about that Roblox issue, because I was fascinated with what you told me before we jumped on here, and I think super helpful because I know how big Roblox is. My like 15-year-old still likes to jump onto Roblox from time to time.
Yeah. And that came up because like, I think a point in the overwhelm, a point to make that how I've at least approached it is general practices, but also let's cross each bridge when we get to it. You know what I mean? Like I didn't know what the heck Roblox was. My 8-year-old came and said, Roblox this, Roblox that. Can we get it? I had to educate myself. Thank you, Protect Young Eyes, as they taught me about it. So I'm finding like just one thing at a time, but Roblox was a big one. I don't know if you want to speak to that now or.
Yeah, one thing at a time, and that's a really important one. It's in the news quite a bit right now. And just to set where we are, Roblox isn't a game. Roblox is 40 million games played every day by over 110 million people. So the 3 times the size of the largest city on earth, Jakarta just took over Tokyo. Imagine that's the number of people every single day that are at that digital playground. Now, they're not all children, but that's also part of the problem is that Roblox has been around now for a number of years. It has an aging user base, which means it's now trying to cater to more 16, 17, like you said, Derek, right? 15, 14-year-olds that are in this game. And at the same time, it is the most popular gaming platform for 6, 7, and 8-year-olds. So that, to me, automatically presents risk in that you have a digital space that is trying to cater to 8 to 18-year-olds. And we're trusting, I mean, how many places in the physical world do we allow that kind of intermingling between 8 to 18-year-olds? Whenever it happens, especially in the digital age.
Completely unsupervised, right? Like
completely unsupervised. So it reminds me of, and this is why I'm hard on school buses are a really horrible place for kids these days because you have a lot of unsupervised kids on their devices and they're ranging from age 6 to 16 often. Roblox is a bit like that, but just at a larger scale. So it's worth noting. Now, here's the thing that creates so much tension in me. There are some good attributes. I mean, you can learn to code. It has this whole coding university where kids can learn to code. And that's a helpful skill for kids to have and to build games and to put them out there. And that's what's so difficult. I mean, as an older guy here, I'm 50 now and, can think of a childhood when the difference between the spaces that were awesome for my childhood and awful for my childhood were often separated by time, space, relationship, or distance of some kind. Like, I had to be pretty darn intentional in the small little central Michigan town that I grew up in if I was going to get into trouble. because of those things that I described. And that's the problem is, I mean, there's a few things about Roblox that I love, and then a number of things I really don't. And they happen to all be in the same thing.
Yeah.
And that's what's so difficult about it. And so parents definitely need to be educated about it. It is not just a game. It is a massive digital world that when you talk about a game having different goals than we do as parents, Roblox may be the best example of that. When it comes to Fortnite, Minecraft, and Roblox, which are like the big three, Roblox is slightly different in that you can't buy a share of Minecraft, you can't buy a share of Fortnite, but Roblox is a company all by itself with over 2,200 employees that is publicly traded on the US stock market. You can buy a share of Roblox. It is a business with a bottom line goal of profit over everything else. That's how it's measured. Now, they all do at some level, but to me, Roblox is just one step. So those are all parts of my risk analysis where I go, you know what? Is that the ideal spot for an 8-year-old? Like, is that where over time, thriving is going to be the way that I describe an 8-year-old's experience over a 6-month period of time in Roblox? You know, you might say yes to it, but man, if you've said yes, I just want you to be ridiculously informed, ridiculously involved. They're never out of your sight while they're playing it. You play it with them, and you are in there as a parent because of all the things that I just described.
Right.
Yeah. Right. Oh my goodness. It's been, I mean, luckily I'm in the phase right now where I can say no and they're like, fine, whatever. Like, you know, but I have a feeling eventually I might have to, they might push a little harder, but I don't remember if this is something that Protect Young Eyes taught me that I came across, or if it was someone else, but one thing we did do, and it sounds so cheesy, but it was really great, was we talked about what we do and we practiced what we do if we find what I've called a bad picture or a bad photo or whatever on a computer, on someone going, hey, look, from their phone, right? Because even then you're out of control. Like, they have no control over what's being shoved in their face. And so we went over it, and just to be practical, I told when I was passing it along to other parents, I said, you know, when you're describing a bad picture, it doesn't have to be, you know, someone with their clothes off. You don't have to start with that. You can start with, you know, violence, something scary, someone with their no clothing on. Like, we talked about what a bad picture was. And then I said, what do you do? And the tablet was in front of them, and they said, we put it down and we run to you, or we run to a parent or whatever. And we practiced it. And it sounds so silly, but we review it every now and then.
No, that is a core part of what we teach, is put it down and tell someone. That's what you remember, is put it down and tell someone. And you practice because young brains need concrete examples. They don't think abstractly yet. And so that's exactly the practice that we teach parents in our presentations. And to be honest though, Blair, that doesn't go away necessarily as they get older. I think teenagers benefit from that sort of very tactical practice too. I think the situations are different, but I want every dad to look at your son, your 17-year-old son, in the eyes, and you put your hand on the back of his head and you say, hey boy, listen, you know that I would, no matter what would happen to you in the real world or the digital world, that I've got your back. But let's make an agreement right now. You're never going to take a picture of your penis and send it to somebody else. And I know I just said that on your podcast out loud.
No, that's great.
But I want their attention, and then I want you to follow that up with, but if you ever find yourself at 2 a.m. in the middle of something because you did something you shouldn't have, I will defend you. I have got you. We will get through it, and never make a decision you can't take back from that moment. There's nothing you could click, send, or do that would change my love for you, change the way I feel about you. Good. Boy, we've got to show them what to do in that moment. If you've found yourself in the middle of a sextortion scheme, here's exactly what you do, amazing son of mine. Like, that doesn't stop. That's Deuteronomy 6:5-9 in action over and over and over again.
Oh, I love
that's really good stuff.
Yeah, I love that.
I know one of the things that we have always said to our kids too is, like, if mom and dad have to be the scapegoat for why you can't do something, whether that's on the digital realm or in the physical realm, like, That's okay.
Yeah.
I got broad shoulders. It doesn't bother. Like, blame it on us.
Yeah.
You know, like, be like, my
We're the
parents
bad
are
ones.
the worst,
Yep.
man, but they won't let me do that.
Yeah. Yeah,
Totally.
I love that.
That's
I
great.
love that. My parents did that, and I did use it more than once.
Yeah.
Well, kind of switching, and maybe if you guys want to take this in a different direction, that's fine. But I was going to propose, well, why don't we switch gears to the older kids, Derek? Yeah. Protect Young Eyes has kind of used a digital trust over digital control. Yeah. Like a digital trust versus digital control showed up a lot in your content. Can you explain what that is?
Sure. Digital trust is a part of our second habit. So we have habits that we want to be true. And I've just written a book that is going to be published in 2026 all about these 5 habits of a tech-ready family. And I would love for your congregation to use this sort of as a playbook, so to speak, as to, I mean, everything that I've covered here, all these examples, the real practical step-by-step approach. I mean, that's really what we specialize in and we want parents to feel empowered by. When it comes to this idea of digital trust, that falls into habit number 2, which is to pursue authentic connection with our children. And in homes where digital trust is high, we have found that digital friction is often lower. In other words, our default mindset with our kids goes back to what I said before, that it's probably not their fault. Right. Our default mindset is that this technology wasn't designed for them. I'm mad at the developers for what that has done to my child and how they're behaving right now, and I'm less mad at them because I would have done the exact same things. These are all little micro ways to build digital trust just in how we respond. We are curious with our children and their technology. We're not condemning. We sit down alongside them and watch and do technology with them when they're younger. We stay involved as well as we can when they're older, and that's just the way that it is. And we start that at a young age so that it's no surprise to your 14-year-old son who has a bark phone that is monitored by his dad, who gets the text message alerts from the conversations that he's having. That's not a surprise. Why? Because I've been monitoring every single thing he's been doing online since he was 5. That's just our family culture. That's just how we do things. So building digital trust has some of those components. For older children, building digital trust is us as parents practicing not freaking out at every little thing that happens online. Not freaking out. We need to remember, again, that it's not often their fault, and that when our young people have found themselves in the middle of a digital crisis or something is going on, they often already know that they're in the middle of a digital crisis. They don't need our digital condemnation to go along with that. They need us to be accepting in that moment to say, I've got you, and I'm treating you exactly the same way that Christ treats me in my junk, unconditional, nothing you could click or say or do. And we've said these things ahead of time, and that's as much for them. It's maybe 49% that they know and 51% that we've practiced it. Because Blair, we just talked about in the practice for your kids, the reason we practice things with our kids, the reason we practice anything is to activate parts of our brain that are more in the front and less in the middle where it's emotional. The limbic part of our brain, the emotional part of our brain, like a traffic signal, is always deciding, should I freak out or should I be calm? And that is less regulated when you're young because you haven't figured out how to categorize things yet. This is why we practice things, to get things out of the, I'm going to get in trouble if I tell mom and dad this horrible thing has happened. And you've overridden that emotion with the practice of, nope, they've shown me exactly what to do. I'm okay. That's the enemy that's telling me not to say anything. And I know what to do because mom showed me what to do. But that doesn't change when they get older. And that also doesn't change for us because we also are emotional. And if we haven't practiced how to respond, so maybe one thing that happens after you watch this podcast, parents, moms and dads, or caregivers, is make a list of all the horrible things that you hope never happen to your kid online. And then you go into your room and you close the door and you say each one of them out loud. And then after each one, you say, I'm not going to freak out. I'm not going to freak out. We need to practice and activate the front of our brain too, so that in the moment we don't respond in emotion, because that's just going to destroy trust. And what the enemy will do is they will totally corrupt that against us. And the next time something comes up, they'll be 51% inclined to say nothing. Because you showed them that condemnation was your default response to their mistakes.
That's really good. Really
I love that. I love that. I think I mean, who knew there was biology in this? I mean, seriously, this is crazy. There's so much to this.
I mean, I think the social media people, the technology people know there's a lot of biology in this, and they're preying on it, right, Chris?
Right. Well, every single thing that makes social media is a limbic. So we have three like functional areas of the brain. We have the part that's keeping us mostly alive called the reptilian or low brain. And then you have the midbrain, which is where we have all of our sort of dopamine reward. That's the limbic system. That's emotions and stress and fear and arousal. And then you have the front part of the brain, the thinking part of the brain. And I just read an article yesterday that new research is saying that that part of the brain doesn't fully develop in some until like their early 30s. Yeah. So when you step back for a minute and say out loud, the thinking part of the brain doesn't fully plug in some till at least their 20s and in some later. That should create a bunch of empathy in us when we put a bunch of emotionally activating devices into the lives of our kids. Yeah. Every single thing that makes social media, you look at the like button, you look at the thumbs up, all of those are limbic system features. Yeah. Do you think that it's an accident that the limbic system is most activated during adolescence, that everything about social media that makes it social media is a limbic system feature? It's not by accident. So it is biology. It's neurology. It's the way that God made us. And that's not like what I say to parents is that's not a bug. That's not what's wrong with our kids. That's a feature. That's how they are. I love that our young people are curious. I love that our teenagers are impulsive and risk-taking and do all of this adventurous, awesome stuff that I'm too old and, risk adverse to do. Sure. But at the same time, you can see where an app like Snapchat, which tempts you into, in the moment, making a decision that is irrevocable, actually weaponizes those amazing God-given attributes of our young people. Yeah. So when you layer the biology over the technology, you start to go, oh, now I know why they did that. And that activates empathy.
And you said, social media activation, and then AI, what they're leaning into is affirmation. And so again, that's just leaning into a deep biological reality and need that we have, right? Where they're trying to leverage that to get us to engagement.
It's the same business model. Every AI model wants us to spend more time in it, but it is actually making a much more sinister promise than social media. Social media promised us better connection with each other, and it did it by having us spend as much time as possible looking at others and friending others. And what we have discovered is that version of connection really doesn't satisfy. We're kind of coming out of that. The promise of AI isn't connection. The problem with AI is not better connection with each other, but rather better connection with it.
Right.
Wow.
And it might just succeed. That's the risk here, is that when you are creating intelligence, you're not just creating, social media was a bunch of features. Social media was a bunch of thumbs up and hearts and features. We're now trying to create intelligence. And that's a whole different animal, literally. We're trying to create something that looks and sounds like us. And how did we start this podcast? By saying we all were designed not only by a triune relationship, but for relationship with each other. And now we're designing something that sounds like us. I read a book one time. It says, like, what species goes out of its way to create its own apex predator? Like, I feel like that's, I feel like that's what we're on the path to here.
And who do we all?
There's a whole nother podcast about AI.
Who do we all respond to most? We all respond to the people who make us feel best about ourselves. The people who seem to love us and affirm us, and and I know when I use ChatGPT, man, I come away always thinking like I must be the smartest guy in the world because it always tells me my ideas are great. Derek, then I go to my wife and realize it's not as great as I think.
I'm here to tell you something sad. You are not.
You're right. That could be a whole other podcast. I would love to. So we talked about the delay is the way. You mentioned two other categories of parents that I want to make sure that we talk about. So you've got the group of parents then who've missed out. I would consider myself, I missed that boat, right? That was not where we landed. And then what do you do? So you said you can either say, well, we're not going to change because that's going to be too hard. So maybe let's talk about that group first.
Sure. And I probably got 5 to 8 more minutes here. And so let's spend it on those two categories here. So if you are a family that has said yes to technology and you're not going to take it away because that would either be too difficult or too disruptive, and everybody has different situations, I want to be sensitive to that, then that gets to a balance of risk. Again, I see the world through risk, and you've said yes to Snapchat or you've said yes to other platforms. You've said yes to risk. And the way to mitigate risk is by being ridiculous. That's my phrase. You have to get ridiculous. You have to be ridiculously involved, ridiculously informed. You have to do ridiculous monitoring. You have to say ridiculous things like the conversations that I role played a little bit later. That is how, if you have said yes to the technical, then you have to be ridiculous with the relational in order to offset that risk. That's the way that it works. So that's what we say to parents. It's not, again, that every child who has it is going to turn into a suicidal, horrible version of themselves. But I'm just saying the studies would say there are at least chances that you've increased the risk that those things are true about your child. So we must do intentional things to offset that. Because there are studies that show that, especially for young ladies who are high users of social media, the one thing that helps offset that are amazing in-person relationships.
I love that.
It's the salve for the technical. It actually proves, I think what we all have known in our spirit as believers for a long time, that relationship really matters, right? And we're made better by that. So that's for the family who isn't going to take away, but there are others that are listening that you know that it's harming your kid. And I'll say to you, I know that that's hard, and the things I'll say next are not meant to imply that it's just like flipping a switch. And this is where I'm going to make a bit of a selfish request, and that is because each of these situations is so different, those that are in crisis, those who have a child who is being harmed in some way, they just simply know what to do. This is exactly why I created this private tech support community, which is staffed by Abby, who I've hired, this amazing, just very technical but empathetic mom who answers these kinds of questions of families who are in crisis all the time because every situation is so unique. But just know that you can do it, that your child is worth it, that you are the parent, that it's going to be hard for a little while. They're going to hate you, but remember, that's not actually them hating you. That's just their brain hating the change. And so we have to depersonalize that and get back to the neurology of it as to it's a bit of a revolt neurologically that they're coming cold turkey off of something that was so activating to certain parts of their brain that of course they're going to hate it for a little while. And so we have different steps we kind of walk parents through. It has to be a united front. If there's a husband and wife involved, you've got to be on the same page. You've got to do this together. You've got to be in it for the long haul. You've got to explain to others around you the decision you're making so that they can be supportive. There's a lot of different factors there, but I just, the illustration that I use, and I've now heard others using it also because I travel quite a bit, is if a pilot is flying in the wrong direction and they realize it, they do two things. They announce that they're going in the wrong direction and they turn the plane the right way. So as parents, I want us to be able to say, yes, we can turn the plane. It's worth it. We need to. And these are some of the steps then that we walk parents through in order to do that. So
that's so good.
Yeah. And those pragmatic pieces, they can find those or steps, I guess you kind of said that you were walking parents through. They can find that on your website. I'd love for you to plug a little here.
Sure. And this is where, whether it's bringing us in, there's different ways in which you can, quote, use us.
Sure.
If you just want self-help, then as you've done, Blair, in preparing for this podcast so well, you can go to our website and just use this as self-help. We have guides for setting up different devices and way to understand apps and kind of just use this as sort of a online tech support. We also share a lot of information. I'm told I give too much away, even through social media and sharing a lot of the things we've talked about here in different posts. And and just kind of go through them, and you'll go, oh yeah, I remember that. Then there's one step maybe more from that, which is you could go through our online course, which is the on-demand version of what we do live, going through the habits. One step maybe more involved from that would be to subscribe just for $12 a month to this tech support. I mean, imagine getting as much help as you need, like Geek Squad at Best Buy, for the questions that you have, by asking Abby. That's what we call the table, because we want parents to come to this table and have a conversation about these things. Or you could bring us to your community and we could activate a whole school or a whole church or whatever this looks like. We travel internationally. We've been in this past calendar year to Mexico and to Canada. I'm heading to El Salvador soon, right? We want to be there to actually stir these conversations and to have them in real life relationship also. So however, quote, you want to use us, we want to have a solution that meets you where you're at.
Oh, no, I love that.
That's so good.
And this is a good chance to plug too. We talked about in-person relationships, and we talked about young ladies that were high users of social media, but you have already mentioned that. I mean, this isn't only ladies, it's meant boys too, that we have youth group at Forward.
Yeah, places for your students to be involved in real life, in relationships with others and with those who are, like a step above them, who can speak into their lives with some wisdom. That cross-generational reality.
We also have Club Forward too for the younger kids.
Yeah, I just think this is one of the this is one of the beautiful realities that God has given us, the gift of the church, right? To be present in real life with people in relationship. That's what our hearts long for. Yeah. And this is what we're meant for.
Yeah, I love that. Chris, I'd love to let you have the last word, in that we've talked a lot about heavy stuff, maybe a lot of negative stuff. Is there a lot of hope? Is there any hope in this situation we find ourselves in, especially touching on the AI? Like, it's a bit of like a dark cloud that I feel like we're walking into. Do you see hope? I feel like Protect Young Eyes is a hopeful organization, or maybe you have a general piece of advice
or opportunity. Is there an opportunity in front of us to grasp?
Sure. Well, and I think that this, I hope, that parents have heard throughout a number of very practical things that whenever they're listening to this, before they get to church on the weekend, they'll be able to do this and this and this. Like that's our heart at Protect Young Eyes, is to give you those things that you can do, that you can, for your own situation, find some hope in that. And so just know that you are not the first one to walk the digital path that you're on. There are others that have, and who have some ideas as to how that can look. And I think that we can be successful if we do certain things. And this is why we've created those 5 habits, and why we have these layers of protection. I believe firmly that if we do these things persistently and consistently around the diligently preventing harm and preventing addictive technologies and pursuing the hearts of our children, that when we do those habits that we talked about, that you will have children who learn how to use technology in good and positive, God-honoring ways. And you will have enough gates around them that when something slips through, you can step in and you can intervene in time to prevent so much harm that they can't. So I just think there's a lot that we can do, but it requires us to do things.
Yes.
And I think that's the part that we want to give parents the tools for.
Yes.
So.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Apathy is probably the worst possible thing in walking into this season that we are in the world.
Yeah. Just to know there are things we can do. I think that gives me hope that as parents, there are some things that we can do to protect those kids that we love, and to help them, as we all want, as Chris has already said, right? Like, if you're a Christian parent, your number one heart and desire should be that your kids would know and love Jesus and follow after him. And how do we digitally disciple them? And I think Chris has given us some wonderful tools to be able to take steps as growing as disciplers of our kids.
No, I love that. I love that. Man, I learned so much today. Holy moly.
So good.
Derek and I were very excited about this podcast. So we have more to talk about, Derek.
Yeah, we do. Yeah.
Chris, it was so nice having you on. I love that you gave us your time today. And I guess heading into another dump of snow, maybe there in Michigan, I hope you can stay warm during the next couple of weeks heading into Christmas.
Likewise.
Yes. It was a pleasure. Thank you also to the listeners. Hopefully you found this helpful. And I mean, this is such a huge topic that I wouldn't be surprised if we hit it again, because there's something going to change.
We haven't even had our AI conversation.
Right,
we had to cut it.
Now we'll have to bring it back in. So thanks for tuning in to the Homefront podcast. We'll see you guys next time.